Hey, welcome back to Road Tripping with Rachel. I'm Rachel. Thanks for so much for joining me here on this road trip. As you can see, I'm actually in the car, but don't worry, I'm not actually going anywhere except for home. I just left work a little while ago. But I realized I haven't really done something super chit-chatty here in a little bit, so I decided to do something. And I wanted to talk about something that just lives rent-free in my head. And I bring this up because the last 2 weeks I have heard sermons, both based off of Christians being called to serve, specifically within the local church. And when I was attending seminary, I had a professor who brought something up. And it is that, statistically speaking, you have about 20% of a church does 80% of the work. Just in my own experience, I would say that's true. Give or take a few percentage here and there. And she posed this question, and she didn't answer it, but it's something that has lived rent-free in my head for a little more than a decade. And that is that she asked, what if the 80% who only do 20% in the church do that because they're 80% of service is outside of the church? So what she's getting at is, what if someone who isn't necessarily using their spiritual gifts on a Sunday or a Wednesday or something like that, what if they're actually using their gifts outside of the typical gatherings of believers? What if you have the person who is an encourager and they are out and about encouraging and they're sharing Jesus that way? What if you have someone who is, has the gift of missions and they are going to places and they are serving in that capacity? What about the people who have the gift of administration and maybe they work for a nonprofit or they help people on an individual level? What if you have someone who's a teacher and they're able to go in and use their gifts to share the gospel with other people? And I think about some of these larger ministries that exist. We would very clearly say or articulate that, such and such person has a major gift that can be used. I would almost say, let's just use Dave Ramsey as an example. Not sponsored, not at all, but I have gone through financial peace just because I had a job previously that I had to take clients to, and they did it, and as a result, I got to sit in on it too. But, I think a lot of people would agree that Dave Ramsey has the gift of teaching. He teaches people how to do things with the intent that they're able to be more giving. It builds up the church, it empowers the church, because if people aren't struggling with a lot of debt, that frees them up financially to be able to be more generous. And he is teaching people how to do that. Now, that is not something that is happening within the confines of a church specifically, but I think we could say that he has the gift of teaching, and specifically he teaches with regards to finance and being more giving. So I kind of even with YouTube, I've used YouTube as a way of using my own personal gifts, with administration, with teaching. It is also a creative outlet for me as well, to be able to articulate my thoughts, to be able to think about and share with things that normally I probably wouldn't ever have a platform for. I still don't really have that much of a platform. I'm just here doing my thing in my own little corner of the internet. But I try to utilize this as a way for me to do Bible studies with people, to be able to present something out there for people to maybe cause them to think about what it is they're reading, to talk about some of those higher level theological terms that get tossed around but no one ever really explains. And I will admit, I attend church on Sundays and I enjoy being around other believers. I enjoy the whole worship experience. But it is very hard and this is like a little bit more on a personal, it is very hard when you have a degree where you have been taught how to do something to find your niche within a church sometimes, especially when you're of the same like educational level as like the pastors. So it becomes very difficult, and I have talked to a lot of people who have graduated from seminaries who have said that no, it does become difficult, because when you're in school, everyone wants to put you to work. It's very easy to get involved because they're like, oh, person who wants to work, let's just stick them anywhere. I'm a little older now, still very willing to work, but I also know where like I'm not good. Like I know where like I shouldn't be placed. So that makes it a little bit harder to get involved, and I think a lot of people do struggle with that, of like, you know, like there are a lot of ministries that churches do that are very good ministries, and there are a lot of people who attend churches who are actively involved, and they are very good at being in those ministries. There's also a whole lot of people who think that is a good ministry, and they have zero interest in being involved in it. I don't think that's wrong, because it's not your thing and it's not your calling. I don't think it's fair to always do the plug and chug method. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't, especially as people get older. Like, they know where they're going to be the most use at, and I think like we need to be a little bit more open to hearing what people say about that, and not necessarily jump on someone because they're not engaged in something on a Sunday or a Wednesday or whatever date your church get together. And that is what has really lived rent-free in my head the last like decade, is that, you know, the church isn't meant to be confined to a building. Like we talk about a church, we're talking about like the physical structure. But building up and caring for the church isn't just about, you know, taking a turn in the nursery or the preschool. It's not just about, you know, volunteering with the youth or working with, you know, the going to like participating in like a nursing home ministry. Those are all great things. There's absolutely nothing wrong with any of them. But the church is the people, and that means that you can use your gifts and abilities outside of that building. I think we get too hemmed in sometimes with, oh, well, I don't serve this way or I don't serve that way. And if you are sharing the gospel and you are encouraging other believers, if you are doing the things that God is calling you to do, then you're using your gifts to do it, then that's exactly what you're doing. You're using your gifts the way God intended you to use your gifts. And I think the more I've pondered this, and I've brought it up before with other people, and like to like try and parse it out and think my way through it, but the more I think, especially with back-to-back sermons that I've gotten to hear about serving and using gifts, I do think that when we hear people complaining about that only 20% of people do 80% of the work at a church, I think that's because the 80% that's not doing something within the building is out in the world, and they are making a difference to the people who are lost and dying. And that maybe the 20% are the ones whose real gifts and calling is to take care of the church as they've gathered during the week. Other people get to go into the mission field and use their gifts, and others are able to serve the rest of their local church on a given day within the building. Those are just my thoughts right now. I don't know if they're right. I don't think they're necessarily wrong. But I'd be interested in hearing some other people's thoughts or commentary on this. So if you want to drop a comment, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I hope that you enjoyed my ramblings this week. We'll get back to doing more with the Book of Acts, but I just wanted to share the ramblings. I haven't done that in a little bit, so we're sharing the ramblings. All right, I hope everyone has a great week. Bye.